Good morning,
Hello.
Amy.
Good morning and good afternoon to you, Kelvin. Today is Sunday, January 14th, and you are watching the Viewscreen. Well, Kelvin, dear, what's been going on?
Here we are, week 2. We
Yeah.
have returned. We are learning as we go. We've got some new opening credits this week, which weren't unfortunately ready for episode 1 last week. So we feel a little bit more prepared this
Yes,
week.
we do.
Maybe a little bit relaxed. I was a little worried. For some crazy reason, I thought 1 hour prior to coming live would be a great time to do my makeup test to be an Orion on the cruise. So I've been furiously scrubbing green paint off my face.
Oh my gosh.
I won't do a close-up on my ears or nostrils because there's probably still some up there.
All right. So we have a green glow, then we know why.
Yeah, I'm not unwell. I'm not jealous. I'm not sick. It's body paint. How's your week been?
Doing great. I wanted to wear my Kindness is Power. This is the Michelle Hurd design t-shirt. Absolutely
Nice.
love it. So I'm feeling lovely and kind today.
Oh, I've got my basic Trek Gay t-shirt on. I think everyone's got this one. It's
Yes,
a favorite.
it is. And welcome to our viewers. We've got a live chat going on. It's everyone. Hello, Rashid, Dave Gregory, welcome. Who else
Yeah,
is
thank you to everyone who's come back, who joined us last week. Thank you to everyone who has reached out with your kind messages following last week's show as well. Very much appreciated. Glad you enjoyed. And yeah, here we go again.
Yes.
So shall we see what's coming up on today's show?
Yes. So, here we go. All right. Well, today we've got our news with Christos.
Hey. And then, well, the bonus of being in the future is that it is 5 o'clock somewhere. It's 5 o'clock here. So let's have a cocktail with Joe Keegan. Joe's going to make us a little drink. Hey, Joe.
Hi.
And we are truly honored to have Dr. Mohamed Noor, who is Star Trek Science Advisor. Hello, Mohamed.
So here we are again, another packed show. So let's get on with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let us bring Christos in and see how he's doing. Hey, Christos, welcome to the Viewscreen.
Thank you for having me. Congratulations, you guys, on your new show.
Well, thank you. It's sort of nice. We've almost got all good things going here. We're just missing the mark. So thank you for coming on, Christos. And you also host What's the Tea, Bev?
I sure do. And I think we're recording new episodes starting this week. So be looking out for those.
Lovely, lovely. So thank you so much for agreeing to be part of our show. When we decided we want a news and trending item, we immediately said, right, we need to get Christos involved with this, because if there's ever any piece of merchandise, any physical media, anything going on in the news, you're all over it. You're the person who tells us. So the floor is yours, my friend. What have you got for us this week?
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that, because I thought it was quiet for a while. It's probably the best word for it. And then suddenly we kind of switched over into the new year, and lo and behold, Star Trek news is coming. And we're starting to see, I think, the ramp up toward Discovery season 5, which is also the final season. So it was just announced that the premiere episode of Star Trek Discovery season 5 will show at South by Southwest, and I believe it's in Austin, Texas. It's a big kind of pop culture-y music, movie, TV type of thing that goes on down there. So the caveat being, and I think the red flag for Star Trek fans being, that this will they haven't decided what day or announced what day it's going to be shown there, but it's going to be shown sometime there in the middle of March, and it won't premiere till sometime in April on Paramount Plus. So I think spoilers may be a problem for fans as episode information leaks out.
Wow.
Yeah, so
That's quite advanced.
Yeah, you usually don't see that kind of, you might see a week before, normally reviews start to come out, things like that. I think the Picard premiere happened a few days before it aired, that Strange New Worlds does the same thing, but this is like a month-ish.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
but we also know a whole lot more about season 5 now. About a week or two ago, the episode titles, all 10 episode titles, leaked online. Not going to really jump into those because you can just speculate all day. And, how many times have you saw an episode title and been wrong? But
I will point out, Christos,
what's that?
I remember when the episode titles for Picard season 3 came out and we were talking about them on All Good Things. You were bang on in your understanding of which would be the Una episode, which would be the musical episode, long before it was announced it was a musical episode. So you're pretty good at this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to speculate too hard today, but we're going to talk about episode 1, the premiere, which is called Red Directive. And we have a synopsis of it too. So that's kind of why I figured we'd talk about it a little bit. So we haven't really had a proper trailer for season 5, but we've had these clips and things like that have shown. And so the synopsis reads, Captain Burnham and the USS Discovery are sent to retrieve a mysterious 800-year-old Romulan vessel until the artifact hidden inside is stolen, leading to an epic chase. Meanwhile, Saru is offered the position of a lifetime in Tilly's efforts to help pull her into a tangled web of secrecy. So this really got me excited because, we actually, if you had to look through all the footage that they showed us before, I think we see this Romulan vessel and it's there on screen for you guys to see. It looks very much like the TNG Romulan scout ships that we saw. So off and running, people are like, is this going to be related to the Romulan supernova? Part of me is like, is this maybe harken back to like maybe episodes like The Chase or something like that? I feel like they're going to do something that's going to tie it into something we may already know about there, which in this particular case, it's a little exciting because I don't know, like some people, I have a hard time with Discovery being so far out from the rest of Star Trek, or the way when it jumped ahead. So I like when they can tie it up, and I like that this is going to be like this adventure romp. So in
terms of a bit of an Amy's math moment here, if this is 800 years prior to where Discovery is now, where does that place us? Is it around the time of TNG DS9, or is it the movies, or is it Picard era?
I think we're in the 2300s ish. So, everything's very loose. Of course, we're in the 31st century, 800 years. I mean, these are just big, so we could be easily in the time of, Next Generation, time of Kirk, somewhere into the lost years, as they're called, or the lost era, and maybe that would be cool if it is something out of the lost era. I don't know, but it's exciting. Also some like super late breaking news related to season 5 was, and I think this came out of the Trek talks yesterday, was that Doug Jones was talking about the gorgeous romance between him and Tarina that we're going to see in 5, which just fills my heart. And that we now know what they've done with the end of Discovery, whether it was going to be reshoots or whatnot. They've actually added an epilogue. So I don't know that they necessarily messed with the ending, or they've added to it. So I think that makes me a little bit more excited about, the way things got pulled at the very end, and suddenly it was all filmed and it was canceled and they're going to do reshoots. And it sounded to me like we could be headed in a very sloppy direction, but an epilogue actually being filmed that takes place after what they filmed, I think it has the ability to hit a little bit better.
Exciting.
Yes. So, I mean, we're 2 to 3 months out from Discovery. Maybe we still don't know when it's going to start airing, but I'm hoping, I'm hoping it's earlier in April, obviously, because we're already into that new Trek drought. I don't know how you guys have been dealing with it, but we haven't had a new episode since the end of Lower Decks, and that feels like it was a long time ago. All right.
Yeah, I noticed when the writers and producers of Prodigy were on Trek Talks yesterday too, they were being very loose with when season 2 is being released on Netflix, because quite frankly they don't know themselves, so they would say we're guessing too. So yeah, we really are having to ration our new Trek at the moment.
Yeah, another news I got related to Prodigy, they were it was on a podcast last week, but they basically were saying that if a season 3 were to be greenlit of Prodigy, it would take 2 to 4 years to get it done. So there would be a huge gap in between. So I don't know how likely we would be to see a season 3, but we'll see. But looking forward to season 2.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't end on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
They've already said that it buttons up very nicely or leaves the door open. Have your pick, but you won't be left feeling like there was supposed to be more. So I like that. I hate when things end very sloppy.
Yeah.
All right. The other big news, and we won't get excited until we actually see something, because we've been down this road with Paramount and new Star Trek movies, at least new feature film Star Trek movies. But Paramount is expanding the Star Trek universe with a new film. Andor's Toby Haynes tapped to direct the Seth Graham writing movie. And this is not Star Trek 4 with Chris Pine. That is also in development. So there are now 2 big feature film Star Trek movies in development at Paramount. So one is still Star Trek 4, yet to be, we're now 8 years away from Star Trek Beyond. So I think we're definitely going to be getting the movie era, or what do you call it? The refit era, how Star Trek had this big gap between 1960s and the 1980s movies. I feel like the longer we've waited between Beyond and the next movie, we may see things really evolve with the age of our crew. And
we're
Star
going to see
Trek 4.
the Kelvin universe versions of the Monster Maroon uniforms.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say there, Kelvin. Thank you. We'll see Chris Pine in the Monster Maroon. So hey,
I'll see that.
Yeah. We always need more cosplay, right? So
yes.
Right. But switching back to this other Star Trek movie, they're calling it a Kelvin timeline movie. They're calling it a prequel by decades to Star Trek 2009. And if you don't know who Toby Haynes is, fans, he had a lot to do with Star Wars Andor. And he also directed the Black Mirror episode USS Callister. Is it McAllister or Callister? I forget. Callister, yes. So he's definitely well-rooted in sci-fi. He's a Star Trek fan. Did anybody watch Andor?
No, I did not.
It was great. I love it. It's like very cerebral Star Wars. It's like if Star Wars was trying to be more like Star Trek, in that not necessarily action, bang 'em up, drama, dialogue driven. It's more like a thriller in some ways. And so it's very, very different from anything you've ever seen in Star Wars. I love it. And it also has an amazing score. But if there's anybody from the Star Wars side of things coming over to Star Trek, this would be the guy I'd be most excited about, because, Abrams has this reputation of trying to make Star Trek more like Star Wars and more, lasers and explosions and action. And we all know what Star Trek is. It's more cerebral. It's more story driven. It's more about the message. So this is really exciting. So what do you guys think about 2 Star Trek movies coming potentially?
Well, as is with all movies since Beyond, I'm just not believing it. They have cried wolf so many times with what movies are coming out. So I can't get my hopes up. I won't. So I will believe it when I see it. But I have a question, like, the Kelvin timeline, that's the point where it breaks off. So how can you have a prequel that's just Prime?
Well, that's the only part
Enterprise movie.
Yeah,
Say that again, Kelvin.
It's an Enterprise movie. Let's face it, because the irony in Star Trek and the Kelvin timeline is that Enterprise at that time was quite, divisive. Not a lot of people rated Enterprise. I know it's very popular again now through rewatch, but Enterprise was the only series that really survived the timeline rewrite. So when you go back before the USS Kelvin, that timeline is named after that ship, by the way, not after me. And everything before that is not in a separate timeline. It's in Captain Archer's period. Right. So there's either going to be a huge amount of retcon, which me, I love my continuity, or they will say this is just in the Prime timeline now, and we get those kind of 70 years or so since the Romulan War and the events of when the Narada came through and met the Kelvin. I would love it if it was. Yeah, I would love it if it was the Romulan War. A lot of people say, "Oh, we've seen this, we've heard this," but we've never actually seen the Romulan War, which is such a monumentous event to form the Federation. And it would be a brilliant movie.
My only hope is that this is not a George Kirk story or whatever, and it's, that's only, you could argue 20 years before Kirk, in 2009, when the time does diverge, right? George Kirk dies basically right as the ship shows up. I'm hoping it goes further back, and we did see some Enterprise throwbacks in Star Trek Beyond, right? So with the uniforms and the ship that they find on that planet that was pre-NX-01. So there's potentially there's some place for it there. I don't know about you guys. I'm getting burned out on prequels. I'd love for us to be doing stuff Picard season 3 and beyond. Only thing that would really maybe get me excited is a movie set in the Lost Era, which is the time between Generations, what we last see at the beginning of Generations, and where TNG picks up. That might be the only prequel I'd want to see right now.
So let me get this right. You'll be happy as long as it's got Beverly Crusher or Savick.
Doesn't even have to have Beverly Crusher. You know what? I will say, as a Beverly Crusher fan, I've got my fill. I'm happy. If they do more with her, fine. If they don't, Picard season 3 was more than I could have ever asked for. So, so I can be objective and say that about, and that kind of like parlays right to my final movie news was, of course, you talked a little bit about this last week. Patrick Stewart is talking about this script that should have been delivered to him by now for another Star Trek movie. And there we go. Rashid there has a comment about it. So yes, Patrick Stewart did a podcast in November or an interview, which was put into a podcast, where he talks about this Picard movie, and he's all over the place. One minute he says he wants it to be Picard, kind of a la season 1 Picard, or, if they were to bring in, Jonathan or Gates or whatever, if it worked for this story, he'd be okay. But, would that be apparent? We don't have any confirmation of that, only that, Patrick Stewart talking. And the only thing we really know is, like, would that be a Paramount Plus movie, kind of like the Section 31, potentially? I could maybe see that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also a little bit worried about going too far with the character. Have we done enough? Are we good? Is it time to move on? Is it really nice just maybe to have him show up as the legacy guy in Star Trek Legacy to, shake his son's hand or something like that? I don't know. But so potentially 4 Star Trek movies somewhere in production, 2 for the big screen set in the Kelvin universe, Section 31, and this other Picard movie sitting out there. So there's suddenly a lot to talk about in the movie world when we haven't had a new movie since 2016. So
I take it we're all set on the fact that Quentin Tarantino one now is definitely not happening.
I am good with that. I don't know about you.
Absolutely.
All right. The last story today is if you are a subscriber to Star Trek Explorer, you got your new magazine this week, which I really give them a lot of credit first and foremost. If you are a subscriber, you get this long before anybody else. Before it's even talked about. I couldn't even find the image on the internet to share. I had to take a picture of it with my phone to share the graphic. That's how tight-lipped they are and how exclusive you are as a subscriber to get it early. But I love this magazine. It's just always, it's like the biggest Star Trek nerd out. There's a lot of good stuff in this, and I'll just talk about two things. There's the life and legacy of Elizabeth Shelby. So there's a whole deep dive into Shelby's character, talking about Best of Both Worlds, the Lower Decks, and Picard season 3. And I don't know if I said this on air a long time ago, but I said about a year ago, or maybe 10 months, that maybe after reading the last Star Trek Picard novel by Una McCormick, wouldn't it be great if Una McCormick did a story starting to tell the stories of Jack and Beverly set in those 20 years that Beverly was MIA? And there's a short story called Jack of Diamonds in this magazine by Una McCormick.
Oh my God.
That is literally a Jack and Beverly short story. And it is set right before the episode, The Next Generation. It's a very short, the whole story takes place in 10 minutes, but it, was a very unexpected surprise. Put a big smile on my Beverly Crusher loving face.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
And
that is really nice about the magazine, that they've got these little shorts and just a little bit to tide you over. And it's like, oh, there's a little Star Trek story. It's very, very nice.
Yeah, and there's so much in these magazines. The last magazine, they did a profile on Diana Mardar and Catherine Pulaski. And that was like the biggest deep dive I've ever seen given to the character ever.
Yeah.
There's an interview with Penny Johnson in this magazine. There's a deep dive into Star Trek comic books, which are, having another golden age if you read Star Trek comics. And there's also a big interview with Susanna Thompson on her time playing the Borg Queen. So, like I said, it's like this every magazine. It's always a page turner. So, anyways, and that's the news.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christos. Let's bring in the rest of our panel. Let's welcome Joe and Mohamed and just do a little bit of
hello.
We can go down. Not that I'm eager to get rid of Captain Pike's face, because it is a beautiful one, but I'd much rather see all of your beautiful faces. So, Dr. Mohamed, Joe, any thoughts on what Christos has just said? Mohamed, I know you were pretty active in the chat there, just chatting with our viewers.
Yeah, honestly, I'm just excited about any more Star Trek. I don't care where it's coming from, but any more Star Trek. Though I do agree with the point that was made. I mean, I do feel like we've had a lot of the TNG cast, and I'm happy to see us go into other directions. Even though I've enjoyed them, I wouldn't mind seeing more of them. I'm happy to see whatever is going to come in terms of these other venues and possibly new casts coming in, broaden the Star Trek universe further.
Yeah, I've quite enjoyed this little lull we've had with Star Trek recently. I think I was getting a bit, I don't know, there was too much of it, too much all at one time. We've had it for so long. I've liked the quiet. I've been rewatching Stargate recently, so that's been quite nice. About the Discovery Season 5, that Red Directive episode, I am going to speculate and think it's something to do with the red matter that Spock used in the whole Romulan supernova thing. Something to do with that, possibly.
Oh, I like that.
Just speculate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing about the whole timeline, now if we go before Kelvin timeline, I think we're all just a bit caught up with the way TV and movies tell us how time travel works, when we don't know how or if it would actually work, and that an event happens and you get this branch timeline being created. What's to say that that branch timeline doesn't have its own past as well that we could go and visit? Who knows? And it's sci-fi, anything, we can do anything. And nothing's canon, so make it so. That's what I say.
Indeed.
Fair point.
before we leave our news segment, hot off the press of the news, I just want to say a big well done to Trek Talks for the Hollywood Food Coalition fundraiser yesterday. They met their $100,000 donation, so that was very well done, and thank you to everyone who gave the time. But also as well, if you didn't watch it, head over onto YouTube. There was some fantastic panels. There was a really great Picard reunion panel with most of the cast, and also a deep dive on the Voyager episode Tuvix as well, with the actor who played Tuvix. Very entertaining. I was watching for hours, so well done to all concerned, and well done and thank you to everyone who gave money.
Okay, so I have a question for the panel. So with Discovery being its last season, and will they answer the question that they gave us in the short trek Calypso? I mean, how now, because Discovery, we are now the refit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Calypso was just the regular Discovery, right?
Do we know if it's the
31.
regular one, or did it just look like the regular one?
Yeah.
Well, is this continuity, or is it, they just didn't know they were going to do a refit at that point, so they just went with the model that they'd got? I'm quite happy with it being open-ended. I quite like the mystery of it.
Okay.
I would be satisfied if it wasn't tied up into a pretty bow and we just draw our own conclusions.
Yeah, I think that now that they mentioned that there was no like reshoot at the end of 5, that they actually just filmed an epilogue, that lends me to think you just kind of find out what happened with certain people, and I don't see that being a direct tie-in, because it wasn't the planned ending of the show, right? So I think that would have to be a part of a bigger story to show us how they got there.
Or Radical thought maybe that the Discovery and Calypso is not in the same timeline.
Yeah, alternate universe.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tim says that they shot themselves in the foot with the Calypso short.
I think that just has to kind of be a standalone, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Wonderful.
I mean, it did
Right, guys.
Zora, so.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of the news and trending this week. It's been a joy. Thank you for being on the view screen. We'll welcome all of you guys back a little later in the show.
Cool.
But with all of that news going on there and all of the speculation, I don't know about you, Amy, but I might be ready for a drink. What do you think?
I think so too.
So Amy and I, we're always on the lookout for a good cocktail. And we've had a number of occasions where we've been sharing drinks together. And we've also been sharing drinks with our very good friend, Joe Keegan. And we wanted to invite Joe on the view screen today to demonstrate his mixology skills. So welcome to the view screen, Joe.
I just got removed. Now I'm back.
Yay.
Hello. Yeah, so I have not been well. I've had this weird flu bug cold thing, so I pre-recorded my cocktail input, which was quite fun because I had to edit it, and it's got its own theme tune. So there's a little intro bit that we'll see in a little minute, and then there's the full segment. So
wow. Well, I'm sorry you're not feeling your best. Let's hope the biofilters are working and me and Amy are protected from the lurgy.
Yeah, bio, not bile. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and have a look at your little introduction clip. Let's see that.
Hi, Kelvin and Amy. Thanks for having me on the view screen in what I hope is going to be the first of our food and drink segments. Today, I'm going to be bringing you some cocktails. Because what else do you do on a Sunday afternoon? And during dry January, I make cocktails that you can drink. So, today the cocktails I'm going to bring you are both rum-based, and they're inspired by some cocktails in the Star Trek cocktails book. So, hope you look forward to that.
Oh, that looks very exciting. I'd watch that. Yeah.
I also have the cocktail book.
Nice. Did that not give you that?
I have the book too, but it's hidden. I mean, full disclosure, I'm actually one of those people doing dry January. So, boo hiss to that a little bit, but I am very much here to enjoy the storytelling. Joe, must say, beautiful camera angle. Looks like someone's showing off a brand new kitchen.
Well, but yeah, 6 months old. It's very fresh. Love it.
Nice. Well, in that case, shall we just roll VT and enjoy looking at your cocktails?
Cool.
Isn't this exciting? I'm going to bring you some cocktails now. I've never done live cooking, so this is going to be very interesting. No, it's not cooking, but it's mixing ingredients to be consumed. So let's have a go at that. First cocktail, well, both cocktails have the same boozy base of Bacardi Maduri, which is a melon-based liqueur. We've got some gum syrup, and we have some lemon juice. And you can use lemon juice if you've got any lemons, or lemon juice if you've got any limes. So let's get started. We're going to start with our trusty cocktail shaker, and I'm going to load this up with some ice. Yeah, let's just scoop ice like so. And we're going to use my little 70ml measuring cup. We're going to start with 2 measures. So it's 2 parts of rum. Like so. Nice. I'm going to do 1 part Maduri. Nice. I always think Maduri is a bit of an acquired taste. It's very pungently melon. 1 part of gum syrup. And gum syrup is just really a cane sugar syrup that's really saturated, so it's quite viscous. It's a bit syrupy when you pour it. And also 1 part of lemon juice. You'll hear I'm full of the cold, I'm feeling miserable, so maybe this is the tonic that will take away whatever alien virus I have. I do like things quite tart, so if you want to put more lemon juice or less to your taste, that would be absolutely fine. Then we give it a twist of shake. You can use 1 hand to shake, or you can use 2 hands, depending on how Tom Cruise you want to feel. That's adequately shaken. You know when it's shaking because the condensation starts to freeze and gives you chill burns on your hands. We're going to serve this in a nice geometric glass, and we're going to serve it over shaved ice. I'm going to make some shaved ice with my trusty KitchenAid artisan food processor and the shaving attachment, which is quite wonderful because it gives you shaved ice. Great during summer for like frozen margaritas. Maybe not so great during winter. But here we go. Yeah, try and get the ice in the food processor and not all over the counter. Of delicious shaved ice. A bit of this, and I'll bring this closer to the camera so that you can see it. It's almost like snow. Delicious. I'm going to load this into my little geometric glass. Chose this one because it's quite futuristic looking. reminds me of the Mr. Frosty machine that everybody wanted as a kid in the 1980s, but I don't think anybody ever got it, and the people that did, it never actually worked. Americans might call this kind of like a snow cone idea. So we're going to load that up like so, and we're ready for our kind of boozy solution to go on it. So I'm just going to generously pour the liquid over it, and we get this lovely green colour from the Maduri, like so. That should do it. And then we're going to top it with some sparkling water, just to give it a little bit of fizz. You can slum it and buy bottled sparkling water, or if you're bougie like me, you can have a specialist tap installed that does it for you. There we go, just a little bit to top off. Then we can serve that with some cocktail cherries, which could, if you're feeling particularly violent, represent the tiny hearts of your weak enemies. I think we'll go for 2. Delicious. And that's our first cocktail. I'm going to call this the Orion Ice Moon. I'm not a big fan of Maduri, but that's quite light. And it's not overpowering in any way. You're getting the tartness from the lemon, and the sweetness from the Maduri and the gum syrup. It's delicious. But it's dry January, so I'm not drinking that. The second cocktail, really super easy. From a Prosecco based one, but using the same solution that we made before. So the same Maduri, Bacardi, gum syrup and lemon juice. So we're going to get a small bottle of Prosecco. I've chosen this lovely futuristic float here. Pour our Prosecco in. Super fizzy, so you might have to wait a while for the bubbles to go down. Far too long, so we'll leave it there. And then another shake up. Add this to there. And just use a long spoon and give it a little bit of a stir. Not too much, because you don't want to decarbonate the Prosecco. You can use cava or champagne if you're feeling fancy. Okay. And then that's the second cocktail. With fizzy wines, I like to serve them with some frozen raspberries. There we go, frozen raspberries. And there we have our second cocktail. I like to call this one the Turgelian Fizz. You can make up any name you want. It might be called the Clac de Kilbrac the Punch if you want. That's quite delicious. The syrup, the solution that we made, really complements the Prosecco, I think. Amy, Kelvin, I hope you've enjoyed this little cocktail segment. Today I brought you the Turgelian Fizz and the Orion Iceman. I hope you enjoy making these at home yourself, and feel free to send me in any suggestions for what you want to see in the future. Amy, Kelvin, back to you in the studio.
Yay. Joe, I really enjoy that. There's a lot of love for Cooper and Jadzia in the chat.
Oh yeah.
Oh really? I missed that. It's weird watching yourself. I'm like, oh, I'm not used to that. It's very strange, but yeah, it was good fun doing it. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
They're very noisy dogs. I wasn't aware of the noise.
It's the pitter patter on your hard flooring.
And then drinking water at 100 decibels.
Nevertheless, very professional. I can sense the emails coming in now, Joe. You're going to have your own little mixology segment on somewhere soon.
So
forward to cameos with Jadzia too.
Yeah. Yeah, were those cocktails directly from the Star Trek cocktail book, or did you play on those and modify them yourself?
Played on. There's one the Ice Planet, the blue one.
Yeah.
I don't have any blue curacao. How do you say it? Curacao?
Yeah.
Caracas?
Curacao.
Okay. I don't have any of that, so I thought I'll just use what I have and make something up.
Oh, that's my tab is actually on
there you go.
the page. I did not plan this, viewers.
No. So it's kind of
that way you got up to.
And I think she's been through it twice now. Yeah, maybe. It's a play on the Ice Planet, given the ingredients that I had. And it's green, so I had to call it Orion something.
Indeed. Is there any way you can modify those cocktails to kind of still make them exciting, but maybe a virgin version for any non-drinkers or those of us who are taking a few weeks off?
Let me see. So there's lemon juice. There's sparkling water. Yes, make lemonade.
Sparkling lemonade?
Yes. Sparkling lemonade with some Prosecco in it.
Yes.
Alcohol-free Prosecco. Yes. Could do that.
I think I've got a bottle of Prosecco in the fridge, actually. I might... Wow,
I've never even heard of this. Wow. Cool.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't, Amy. Wonderful. Christos, what about you? Did you enjoy that?
Oh, I did. I got, it reminded me, first off, good job, Joe, because that, very well produced cooking segment there. Your attempts at Julia Child were right there.
Yes, I was going to Julia Child. Who's the Aina Garten? The
Barefoot Contessa.
Barefoot Contessa, yeah.
I was reminded the way Rachel Maddow used to end her show every Friday was with a cocktail. Yeah, literally the last 5 minutes was making a cocktail, and she had a big cocktail book and with a different recipe every week. So, little throwback to that. But yeah, I have got my book, and I'm going to have to pull some out. I know we all discovered this book toward the end of the pandemic, and we were making recipes out of here. But
we were.
I've been recently rediscovered an old-fashioned daiquiri, and I've been making those. So I need to find a way to put a little. There's nothing like that in here, so I need to find a way to put a Star Trek twist on that.
Good stuff. Right, guys, thank you so much. And now we've wet our whistle, so to speak. Amy, what's next?
Well, we are going to bring on Dr. Mohamed Noor after a short little break.
What else can you listen to on the BQN? Replicate yourself a mug of hot chocolate and join Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin as they discuss everything and anything in the Star Trek universe on All Good Things. Boost yourself with an energy drink and join Davey on YouTube and Twitch for reviews and live streams of classic, cheap, and sometimes more recent video games on Bargain Bin Gamer. Brew yourself a pot of coffee and join Jeremiah to discuss Star Trek Voyager on The Captain's Couch. Mix your favorite cocktail and join Mark and Matt at Cinema Z to discuss the films you probably missed but should definitely check out. Pour a cup of tea, Earl Grey, hot, and listen to Stephen and Keith as they discuss the next generation of Trek on Galaxy Class. Get yourself something caffeinated and learn an interesting bit of history with Chrissy and Jason on History with the Zalogis. Have a bowl of Flo-Meek soup and join Thad and Chrissy and a guest to discuss new episodes of Star Trek as they are released on Infinite Diversity. Have something to sharpen your mind and put your Trek knowledge to the test with the Treksperts quiz. Take a bite out of something that didn't seem edible and join Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley covering all things in new Trek, including that show that is Trek in all but name, The Orville, on Union Federation. Get your Sunday brunch ready for the Viewscreen, a live weekly talk show hosted by Kelvin and Amy with featured guests talking about all things Trek. Pour a glass of wine and spill some tea with Christos while he discusses current Trek news and events and explores the world of fandom via guest interviews, all with an LGBTQIA+ perspective on What's the Tea, Bev? And Patreon members get to pass around that green bottle of Aldebaran whiskey once a month on the round table, and they can listen to It's Green with Mark White and Amy's Math Moments.
Wow. Kelvin, I'm so excited to bring on Dr. Mohamed Noor. We've been friends for a very long time when we first met at STLV. And if you know the Smash Burger up there on that second floor, that's where we shared lunch. So please welcome everyone, Dr. Mohamed Noor.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here. And I love that Smash Burger. You know, you can order, if anybody's at STLV, you can order on the app and just show up and pick it up.
Yes.
Hot tip.
They didn't have that kind of stuff when we were there. We had to wait in line.
No.
That
You
smash
remember
burger
when that
saved me
was?
from many a hangover.
I think it was 2019. I'm not positive. I think it was 2019.
Okay, yeah. So welcome to the Viewscreen. Just so excited. Oh, and we did get to meet November, right? When I came out.
Exactly.
Yes,
Was it November?
yes.
Or was it? I can't remember. It was
Oh,
actually
December, first week of December. Yep,
Yeah.
yeah. So tell us what's new.
With me personally, or should we talk to eugenics?
Well, I would like to know personally first, and then we'll go to eugenics.
Sure. So, well, I mean, I work at Duke University. I'm a professor there, and the semester has begun. I'm actually teaching a class with a Star Trek connection. It's actually called Genetics Evolution Star Trek. It's for first-year students, where we use basically examples from Star Trek to teach real-world examples about genetics and evolution. So it's really fun. This coming week, we're going to be watching the episode with the exocomps of the Next Generation. So looking forward to that. But yeah, diving into the semester.
Wow.
Man, I wish I could create a course like that for math. Like that would be amazing.
Oh, I would totally take your class in a heartbeat.
I don't think there's a Star Trek equivalent of safety, which is my profession. So maybe how to stop the barrels falling on Worf. I don't know.
Yes.
They should have it because they definitely don't seem to take precautions around diseases. Like people are just walking around and people are sick. Nobody's wearing any like gloves or masks or anything. So they could take a lesson from you on that too. But we were talking earlier about maybe talking a little bit about things like, could the eugenics war happen? This is a very, very deep topic. So I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I thought actually it would be good to talk just briefly about the setting in Star Trek canon and then come back to the real world pieces in there. So we were, of course, introduced to the eugenics war in the context of Khan and Space Seed, right? Now, the way he was developed actually changed. It got retconned, sorry, pun intended. It got retconned partway through. So in that original episode, they said that he was the product of selective breeding. Now, you all are familiar, of course, with many examples of selective breeding. Obviously, like if you see dogs, I mean, obviously all the different breeds of dogs we see today had some sort of wolf-like ancestor, but we see this incredible diversity. And what would happen is basically people said, I want the dog with the floppiest ears. And then they got that, out of the litter, they picked the one that had the floppiest ears. And then they did that iteratively over time. And over time, that ears got more floppy or they got more playful or whatever behavior you're looking at. There's a lot of examples of that. There's a lot of examples in plants too. So a lot of the vegetables we're very familiar with, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kohlrabi, those are all the same plant. Those all came from the same wild mustard. But again, it was this product of farmers selecting for particular traits. Like I want to have these little bulbs. I want to have things that look like the broccoli florets. Iteratively selecting over that. And that will work. I mean, that works pretty well with as long as three conditions are satisfied, right? Three conditions. First one is there's variation, right? So some things have smaller bulbs, some have larger. That variation is heritable, meaning there's some genes that encode this variation in bulb size, and that there's differences in survival or reproduction. So in this case, you're specifically letting the ones with the smallest or largest bulbs reproduce more. That's how natural selection works. That's how selective breeding works. And it works. It works in general as long as those three conditions are satisfied. Now, in terms of con, okay, let's say that you were picking somebody who was exceptionally smart or somebody who was exceptionally strong, and you were to do that iteratively. Well, Khan was in original series was supposed to have lived as an adult in the 1990s. So he was probably born like late 1960s, early 1970s. How many generations did they select? Like, if they started in the 60s, it would be one generation. It's basically just like they picked the strong guy.
Right.
Doesn't really work. So, I mean, you'd have to have started for you to see some sort of effect. It would have to have started like hundreds of or thousands of years earlier or something like that. So that doesn't really work. And they clearly figured that out by the time the Wrath of Khan movie came out. Throughout the whole selective breeding thing, like, no. He's a product of late 20th century genetic engineering. Far change. Now, when we talk about genetic engineering, what are we talking about? Like DNA has those little letters, A, C, G, and T. We have 3.1 billion of those times 2, right? So there's a lot. Wait, did I say that wrong? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, the number right there. So we do have technology now where we can go in there and change specific letters. Like, oh, I changed this T to a G. Maybe, somebody who would have had something like sickle cell anemia now doesn't, or, whatever genetic disease or something like that. So that is an instantaneous effect. If you do that on an embryo or on a gamete, immediately that next generation will have it. You can't do it like on a skin cell because obviously then it's just producing more skin cells. You have to do it like on a one-celled embryo or something like that. We have technology to do things like that right now. And people do that all the time with flies. And many of you have heard of, clone sheep and things like that from the past. But yeah, this sort of genetic editing for those things can be done. What we don't have is the knowledge to make something super smart or super strong. Like, we don't know how to do that. Like, we know some genes that have some vague association in a general population sense with, say, height or something like that. But saying, like, if I change this A to a T, will you be 5 centimeters taller or something like that? There's a couple of examples of that, but there's very, very, very few examples, and certainly nothing like that in the context of intelligence, unless you're talking about just a broken thing. Like if somebody has a broken copy and therefore their brain is malformed. We have some examples where we know, like, okay, we can substitute that, we can fix that. So that still doesn't really work, but in principle it could. If we had, if you imagine, like, say, hundreds of years in the future, maybe we will know a lot more. And in principle, you could edit and do some sorts of change, but right now, not so much. Now, no, please.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So I can understand why you couldn't do a gene for intelligence, but can you easily change a gene like eye color, or like you were saying, height? Can that easily be done, or no?
The technology is there. The knowledge is less likely to be there. So there's a few genes that we know. Generally speaking, most traits that we look at, especially something like, height, height less so, but especially something like intelligence, there's a genetic component, but it's actually not that big. It's a huge environmental component.
Right.
Now, something like height tends to be very heavily genetic. Like there's a little bit of an environmental factor in terms of how much you eat and what access to food, things like that. Yeah. Generally speaking, most of the variation you see in height actually is genetic, but it's not like it's one gene. There's like the variation you see is across tons and tons of genes. And that's why selective breeding actually works better in general, because you don't have to know. And when you apply this process, it's not picking like this one T to one C over here, but it's just taking the whole set. Like these individuals have a lot of the higher height variance, and you're selecting for those generation over generation. It could work. And it could actually, in terms of traits, height might be one of the best ones where it could physically work. For something like intelligence or strength or something like that, I mean, there is probably a small heritable component, but I mean, if you want to just make somebody really like strong or really smart, you're much better getting a group of kids and educating them well and having them work out. I mean, that's going to have a much, much bigger effect than anything we'd be doing by manipulating genes, at least in the near term here. Like it's going to have it'll be almost indetectable. And
so going into the Star Trek route, then with that,
Sure.
The area that springs to mind where they've used genetics to modify appearance would be the Voyager episode Lineage, where B'Elanna attempted to change Miral's DNA so that she wouldn't have forehead ridges. So as a man in the know who studied this, did you look at that and see it as a big leap, or is that something that you think, could be done today? if that knowledge was there with the mapping exercise, so to
If the
speak.
knowledge was there, it could be done today. And something like forehead ridges, that probably doesn't have a big environmental component. It's probably mostly heritable. It's much more. It's not like you can work out and get bigger forehead ridges, probably. Though who knows? I mean, I guess we don't really know how Klingons work in that sense. But yeah.
So we can settle the method, we can settle the technology. It's just the ethics and the morality we have to deal with around that.
And there's things tied to the ethics aside from, I mean, there's a lot. Let me come back to the ethics people. There's other aspects that we often think we know more than we do, even when we do know things. So let's take an example like neurodiversity, right? If you were to go back, say like 40 years ago, people would be like, oh, we should like totally like wipe that out and have everybody be neurotypical and things like that. We now know that's actually not healthy. That's actually not good. That like there is value to having variation. Basically, there's very value to having neurodiversity. If you have like say like businesses that have people with different neurotypes, it actually leads to better outcomes for business because you have basically people have different skills and different perspectives and they can solve things better. This is often true when you look at genetic diversity. We tend to think that this is the better and that's the worst, but often it's not so clear cut because if in a particular setting this other type might be better and you just don't know. Now, if you're thinking in the context of like this mutation will make this person not live past the age of 1. Okay. In that sense, yeah, probably that's not better for society to let that particular mutation persist. But if somebody can actually say, for example, survive to adulthood, we think we know what's better right now when we talk with people socially, but we're probably very often wrong. I'll give an extreme example. Sickle cell anemia, which I brought up earlier, right? Like we actually know the gene that mutates to cause this. The reason sickle cell anemia is so common is if you have one copy of the sickle cell anemia variant, you actually are resistant to malaria. If you have none, you're not. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why it's so popular, or it's not so common, not popular, why it's so common in sort of tropical environments. So again, like things that you would think are bad sometimes have a benefit that just is not well appreciated ahead of time. So this is why it's very problematic. Aside from the inefficacy of doing things like that, it's also presumptuous of us to presume this is better and this is worse. Again, with the exception of things like this person will die as an infant.
Wow.
Yeah. It's fun stuff. I love genetics.
So with that, the 3 things you mentioned, like the variety, like when I see TNG's Masterpiece Society and they're like, well, they've been, genetically, he's the leader. So he's been bred or whatever. Like that's just not going to happen.
That doesn't make sense. I mean, maybe like you could breed for something like leadership or something like that, but the effect is so much smaller than just give people good, training on HR. Like that. Like that would be way more effective than trying to selectively breed, and it's certainly a lot less costly and a lot less problematic ethically. Yeah, no, I mean the idea that people are somehow like made for particular roles. I mean that's very fraught in both in a genetic sense as well as in a social sense.
What's your opinion of the kind of Star Trek narrative of genetic manipulation makes you a bit evil and psychotic? With the augment ban that there is, and the stories around Bashir, and obviously Khan himself. I take it there's absolutely no scientific facts in. Superior knowledge breeds superior ambition.
That aspect. So I mean, the piece that I like about it is genetic engineering is a slippery slope when you're talking about humans, right? When you say like, I'm going to make this person better, like what? And again, there's the easy cases, like I mentioned, that this person would have died as an infant. Okay, that's pretty uncontroversial. Very few people would say, no, you absolutely shouldn't do that. You should just let them die as an infant. Nobody's going to argue that. But then it starts getting much more slippery slope because then you start looking at what if this person is like neuroatypical? What if this person has curly hair in a society that likes straight hair? What if this person has, all these things like that? It's such a slippery slope. And, figuring out where to draw the line aside from the most extremes is really tough. So, I mean, I get why they said, given that the technology is available now, I assume the technology is even easier there in the future. Though it does also beg the question how they did it with somebody like Bashir, because he wasn't a one-celled embryo. Like he was already like a 5-year-old or something like that. I can't remember exactly what his age was. How do they change like the DNA, not just in that original embryo, but in every cell of his body? I don't know how they do that.
Mm,
But
mhm.
clearly they have the technology to do that. And given the technology is available, I can see why they're like, yeah, maybe let's not touch this. Let's have everybody not touch this. I can sympathize. I can see how they ended up in that place. Now, the judgments against those people and barring them from holding jobs, it's not their fault. I mean, Bashir didn't choose to do this, as an example.
So a situation like Doll in Prodigy, like that's unintended consequences there.
So Dahl, the verbiage they used for him was he was a product. I remember this actually. I suggested this verbiage to them. He was a product of artificial hybrid speciation, and that's a case where you have so hybrid speciation is potentially a real thing where you have different combinations of genes from different species, but you're not just a hybrid, but you're actually like a new species that basically doesn't as easily or doesn't as readily breed with the others. I added the artificial because this was done in a laboratory sort of setting like that. Now. So I'm sorry, what was your question about that?
Well, just, is it possible, but would that have to have been done when he was a single cell?
It's certainly a lot easier. It's a ton. I can't really conceive. I mean, obviously in the Star Trek universe, they do it when they're not, but it would be a ton easier to do it as a single cell embryo, or even one step earlier to do the gametes, do the sperm and do the eggs and then put them together. Either of those, because then you're only working with 2 cells or 1 cell instead of working with hundreds, thousands, millions, etc. As you get bigger and bigger.
I always, in my head canon, imagine that there's some kind of the transporter is involved in some way, and that people are converted to code. Yeah, they're converted to code, edited, and then rematerialized in the genetically engineered state. So yeah.
But at that point, I don't understand. The transporter is such a magic device. It can just fix everything. I mean, at that point, like if you have a cut, why not just I'll just transport out and back, but without the cut.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh, it is fascinating. I think
let's
questions pop up in the chat.
Yeah.
Let's bring back Christos and Joe as well.
Sure.
Hello. That was fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we do have a question from Tim Han. Says, what would the amount of power and energy be involved to replicate food Star Trek style?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's not really a biology question as much as a physics one there. So I don't
get the technical manual out.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it's tricky too because what they say is they reconstitute it down to the atomic level, right? It's not even molecular, it's like atomic. Like, oh my gosh, that would be huge.
Yeah, that's
I don't think I can give you a number or something like that, a number of kilopascals or something like that. I don't think I can give you a number on that.
Yeah, that's a nuclear energy question, isn't it? It's like E equals MC squared, essentially. You're converting matter into energy like they do in nuclear power reactors. And if you're doing it with like a kilogram of steak, you're doing the 1 kilogram steak multiplied by the speed of light squared. So you're looking at 9 times 10 to the 16 joules of energy, which seems like quite a lot. You're going to get like a sunburn from the replicator when it manifests your steak. Wow.
Yeah. I had a question. You were mentioning how genetically modifying a child or an embryo or whatnot is one thing, but 5-year-old Bashir or let's say an adult. I mean, like I used the example of Star Trek: The Next Generation, the Genesis episode where Beverly does something wrong and they mutate. Everybody mutates completely into another species, pretty much. And what would the effects on the human body be to mutate into something else and then mutate back? I mean, is it even hypothetically possible that?
No.
That's what I thought you were going to say. Science fiction.
Well, so the way they explained it in there is they said that something like activated the introns, and they said the introns are these. If this is for the episode of Genesis, they said the introns are like latent genes that used to have effects a long time ago and no longer do today. That actually introns are a real thing, but that's not the definition of introns. What I think they meant to say was pseudogenes, which those are real things. So, for example, everybody here on screen, we have a pseudogene for vitamin C. So like we have to take vitamin C in our diet. Our dogs don't need vitamin C in their diet. They just produce their own vitamin C. Our vitamin C gene broke sometime in the history of primates there. So ours is no longer functional. Now, just turning it on is not going to make it so we have viable vitamin C because that gene is not, it's not just it's turned off, but it's like broken. So it would make this like crazy compound that would not actually be vitamin C that we could use. And what you could do in principle is you could get an embryo and edit the vitamin C gene to be okay and have it produce. And then, and then that person never needs to have vitamin C anymore in their diet because they're just producing it on their own, like we do for vitamin D in the sun. But yeah, so I mean, pseudogenes exist. I guess the basic principle of that, the idea that there are some dead genes around. Yeah, I mean, that is true. But usually they're broken up to the point that they're kind of useless. So saying that like, oh, now I'm going to like turn into something that's more amphibian or something like that. Yeah, no, those are gone. They're long gone. The other thing too is it confused cousins with ancestors. So for example, Barkley transformed into that sort of spider-like thing. Yeah. We don't have any ancestors that were spiders,
right?
It's kind of like we share ancestors with spiders, but we are not descended from spiders. Just like you share ancestors with your cousin, but you're not a descendant of your cousin. It's the same concept.
Yeah, Riker's probably the one that they most got it right with.
Yeah. I mean that point sounds like primitive humanoid. Yeah, I mean we do. I know we do have a lot of Neanderthal genes, for example.
Yeah. The other comment I was going to make, Kelvin, going back to what you were saying about, the superiority thing, with genetic manipulation and whatnot, I kind of think that would almost happen socially, right? It's like if we, how people who tend to have it all, like, tall, good looking, muscular, head of the football team, people who just have it all, they tend to socially rise to higher and things are easier on people, right? We kind of say that's almost like a privilege thing that kind of comes in there. So if you have a race of people who were genetically, they're going to be well-defined athletes. They're smarter and they're whatnot. There would just kind of become the superiority complex. I think that is, it can be nature versus nurture kind of thing, but not every person who has all those attributes is an ass, but by whole it tends to be the way things go socially, right? You know what I mean? It's more likely to be. So I could see where a whole race of people who have everything going for them, so to speak, would begin to think that they're better than, and then try to dominate over others.
And and like as you said, like the social structures are what are defining what's the best in that sense. Like, is it better to be taller? I mean, it really depends on the environment, If let's say, for example, we were being chased by things and there were small caves, I'd way rather be shorter, So it really is defined by the environment, by the culture, by a lot of other aspects, what is best. And that's why, like, if you start genetically breeding out some of that variation, that's actually bad in the long run. It's very, very bad, both socially and biologically.
It's like that Twilight episode where the woman's there with all the pig people, and it's like, well, it's only a matter of what society deems is normal.
Exactly. I remember that episode. That was a great one. That was from the 50s Twilight Zone, or 60s.
I have like 500 trains of thought going about genetics.
You'll probably have time for one of them, Joe.
So no, I'm keeping at like, do we use genetic engineering for like curing mitochondrial diseases and Down syndrome? That's a kind of good use case, but the super soldier idea. Do we make super soldiers with soldiers that are more predisposed to having bigger muscles, being stronger, being faster, not necessarily being more intelligent because we can't do that? Or do we just spend the money on building them powered exoskeletons?
Oh, interesting.
That kind of thing. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, loads of things. And then the thing, we've been doing genetic engineering for thousands of years. And the example that came to my carrots a couple hundred years ago, it looked nothing like the carrots we have today. They were horrible, thin, stringy things. Yeah. But obviously we wanted them to have more sustenance to them. So we like picked the bigger, fatter ones and we grew them until we got the carrots we have today. And there's a breed of Belgian bull that's bred for its musculature, so it can be entered into competitions. And these things looked completely jacked up as if they're on steroids. These bulls, you should Google the muscly Belgian bull, listeners, because it's fascinating. But it's iterative generations of breeding the strongest baby bull. So you get this big, giant kind of muscle daddy bull.
Lots of examples. Ancient bananas are terrible. Ancient corn is terrible. I mean, all of it. There's so much stuff that we're lucky to live today and not thousands of years ago. We have so much better food. But yeah, it's a good question in the context of like what to do. Now, you mentioned the mitochondrial things too. So it's not exactly genetic manipulation. There, you're actually substituting out the whole mitochondria. That's what's happening there. So it's just a substitution. So that is something that is done today. So basically, if, for example, a woman has a mitochondrial disease, you can then essentially get the cell from another woman, implant her nucleus into there. So basically, you get the nuclear genome from one woman, but the mitochondrial from another. And that's a good way of just bypassing the problem.
Yeah.
That's one that's less likely to get abused, because it's not like, mitochondria can make you, like the examples that were used earlier, tall, blonde, and beautiful or something like that. It's not going to have any effect on that. It's literally just, it's going to do almost nothing or get rid of the set of bad diseases. So that's, again, less controversial, I would argue.
Yeah, and that's like you were saying earlier, like the side effects of doing these things, we don't really know. Like somewhere down the line, did we actually need this thing for something in the future?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
There was a debate recently about could they use genetic engineering and some like CRISPR or something for curing Down syndrome. But then the question was, is that the right thing to do? Because then you would ultimately reduce the population of Down syndrome people to zero. And Down syndrome people will have little communities, like they get together, and ultimately you'd wipe them out. And like, oh, okay, hadn't thought
Down
about
syndrome is a funny one because it's not exact. I mean, it's caused by having an extra chromosome.
that.
So it's not like,
It's
not like Downs people give birth to other Downs people. So that's an unusual case. But I hear what you're saying, because I mean, the place I would apply that would be again around something like neurodivergence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have another question in the chat is from Tim. Hi, Tim. Is there danger of genetics being weaponized by the military for military purposes?
Always danger.
Knowing our governments, yes. The answer would be yes.
Again, given the inefficacy of it, I think the danger is not that large, at least today. Because, I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, they can't just instantly make a super soldier. I mean, at best, if they did have the knowledge to maybe make somebody a little bit stronger, then they're going to have to do this on the single-celled embryo and then wait for him to grow up for 20-something. Again, that's not a good use of money. To make them a little bit stronger, maybe.
Also, quite the relief to know that. Yeah, I think we're all going to sleep easier tonight knowing that the government is not breeding all of these super soldiers and they're going to start a war. It
would be a very poor use of money, as well as unethical. It would be a very poor use of money. It's like, this is not going to be worth it. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me come talk about this. This was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, they have so many more questions. So thank you, everyone. Mohamed, where can people find you out there on the interwebs?
Sure. I'm on the socials at Mohamed Noor, M-A-F like Frank, N like November, O-O-R. Or on YouTube, I have a channel with a bunch of little videos called Biotrekkie, B-I-O-T-R-E-K-K-I-E. I also have a book, if anybody's interested, that teaches genetics and evolution using Star Trek examples. It's called Live Long and Evolve. You can find it at Amazon or your local bookseller.
Yes. Again, thank you for coming on. Joe, with your wonderful cocktails, we enjoy your humor. And where can people find you out there?
You can, where can? It's been a while since I've podcasted. I don't even know where you can find me in my house. You can get me on X at Joey Joe Simpson UK, same with Instagram or on Facebook. If you search me, Joe Keegan. Yeah.
And Christos, where can people find you?
You can find me over in Facebook in the BQN Collective, and you can find me on Instagram at either Greek Geek SD or at What's the T-Bev.
Thank you so much to all of our guests online for joining us today. We'll see you all in a few weeks, I'm sure, when you come back. Thank you. Guys, we would love to hear what you thought of today's show, and we hope that you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, where you can continue our discussions over there. Please make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, which will help people find the show here on YouTube, so that you never miss an episode of The Viewscreen.
Yes. And if you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming, please visit patreon.com/BQN. And Yes. I sort of got lost there for a minute.
We are done for the day. So, Amy, what have we got next week?
Well, next week we've got Kristen, who is joining us to give us the news. Guys, cosplay tip and hint from Josh and Cam. And we have another very special guest, Edwin Hodge, who's going to connect correct to the human condition. He teaches sociology. We're very excited to have him on next.
That's all. Same time, same place on the view screen. But for now, it's time to end transmission. So goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.